I'm pleased to introduce Stuart J. Murphy and Jon Dueck, who will be talking about the power of stories and visual models in the teaching of mathematics. Stuart J. Murphy is a Boston-based children's book author and visual learning strategist. He is the author of the award-winning Math Start series. Jon Dueck is the Director of STEM Education for the Office of the Fresno County Superintendent of Schools. He works with teachers and administrators to build programs that promote a worthwhile and optimistic view of math and science. Jon will open this session with a discussion of the value of using literature to teach mathematics in the early years and provide a few examples from his classroom experiences with young children. Stuart will take you on a journey through the world of literature and math and show you how together they can create a path to success. He'll explore how stories about the kinds of things that interest kids, taking care of a pet, playing a sport, going on a vacation, visiting a mall or an amusement park, engage students and make math relevant to their lives. In early 2019, a series of events, which included a newspaper article from Oakland and a misadventure trying to purchase a copy of a Spanish children's book, really highlighted to the Early Math Project that it can be challenging to purchase high-quality, affordable children's books in a variety of languages. In California, we are aware of 67 languages, in addition to English, spoken by California students. Of dual language learners in California, Spanish is the predominant language of 81.6%. The next four most predominant languages are Vietnamese at 2.2%, Mandarin at 1.9%, Arabic at 1.5%, and Filipino at 1.3%. We are so pleased that HarperCollins and other publishers are publishing and have begun to produce children's literature in a variety of languages. It is so important that all children have access to high-quality, affordable books at home in their primary language. Stuart's 5 new Spanish titles help address this need, and we appreciate his partnership and support in improving access for children. Please welcome to your screens Jon and Stuart.
Hello, and welcome to this session on the importance of literature and mathematics. My name is Jon Dueck, and I am the Director of STEM Education for the Office of the Fresno County Superintendent of Schools. I began my career in education while in high school, working as an instructional aide at Chapter 1 preschool. I had a work-study experience there and spent 2 periods a day working with 3 to 5-year-old children. That's where I learned about the beginning stages of education and what it looks like to teach and instruct the youngest of our children. From there, I moved on to working at before and after school programs. These extended day programs gave me further insight into how children develop and learn over time. Helping students with their homework, caring for their social and emotional needs was not just a job, but an enjoyable experience to see that I could contribute to their growth. I began my teaching experience at a small rural K-8, a one-school school district in a largely rural portion of Fresno County. That's where I began to focus on teaching math and science with a partner teacher focused on language arts and history. Having the time to dig deeper into what math instruction should look like was a true gift. I was able to learn about scope and sequence, conceptual understanding, and how to build true mathematical knowledge. I did not grow up enjoying math. I remember being frustrated early on when I was unable to do well on timed multiplication tests, being frustrated that other students were doing better and I was doing repetitious work on a daily basis. Math became a set of rules that I did not enjoy memorizing. It is memories like that from elementary school that pushed me towards deeper and stronger mathematical instruction. I do not want anyone to have a frustrating math experience at an early age, or any age for that matter. Math is useful, math is all around us, and math makes sense. Ultimately, math should be fun. Today I'm going to share about how math can not only be fun, but how tying literature to it can make it even better. It's a pleasure to be a part of this conference and share with you how literature and math can go hand in hand. Hopefully you've spent large amounts of time reading to children and enjoyed the time building that relationship. Children love being read to. I developed a great love for reading as a child. This began by experiencing a mother, father, and grandmother reading to me. I looked forward to those evenings, hearing stories, and I carried that on with my own children, also hoping that they would have a love for literature as I do. I remember how often I was read the book Harry the Dirty Dog, and the monster at the end of this book, not really being afraid of Grover turning the page, but looking forward to the silliness. The repetitiveness instilled in me storyline and flow. I grew up understanding the ups and downs and climax returning to resolution. Little golden books were all around my home growing up, and when the scholastic orders became available, I begged for new books. I still own some of the books from my childhood, and have been able to share them with my own children as they were growing up. 3 of my children are now adults, and number 4 is going to start 5th grade in a few weeks. Hopefully at this point you're thinking about books that were important to you when you were growing up, or perhaps you're thinking about your favorite current children's books. Maybe one of your favorite books is on this opening slide. Maybe you're thinking about other Stuart Murphy books, or perhaps you're also familiar with Harry the Dirty Dog. Rarely do people do math for the sake of math, and few people work numbers for the sake of numbers. The math around us is based on real-life situations, and there's a context for the numbers. We need to remember this when we approach our math time in the classroom. Math should be more than a basic story that is really just a computation problem with a quick context. Telling kids to add 3 tablespoons plus 4 more tablespoons is not cooking or making a recipe. It's simply giving a contrived frame that students still do not care about. A story gives context to numbers, and we have the gift of dozens of stories by Stuart Murphy and that take the math and put it into a context that is meaningful. Whether we are matching socks, comparing amounts, waiting for alarm, or any other area of mathematics, it is the stories that use math and make it applicable. A strong math lesson uses more than numbers. Very few people enjoy timed tests or worksheets with a long list of problems to simply compute. We carry a calculator on our person at all times. Understanding a reasonable answer is more important than automaticity. I can sit with my son, and if he asks what 60 times 12 is, I can reduce that and say, what is 6 times 12? And think about reasonableness. Talking about the situation and making sense is the key to understanding how numbers work together. If students are supposed to multiply but add, they will not realize the error from simple computation, but they will realize it if they end up with an answer that doesn't make sense regarding an entire situation. We need to keep the goal in mind. It is bigger than rote memorization. Asking students to explain what the question is, using routines like notice and wonder, contemplate and calculate, capturing quantities, or connecting representations are the key to drawing out pertinent information and discovering what you were actually trying to answer. When we can bring literature and other content areas into our math program, we maintain a classroom and lesson structure that gives a reason. By outlining what is happening beyond a simple scenario and into a larger story, we give a problem solver a background. Science cannot exist without mathematics. History has numbers throughout it. And as much as language arts can almost stand alone, there are patterns and situations where the numbers are called out. We live in a world of numbers, and people unknowingly say they are afraid of math without realizing that they're using it every day. We wrongly designate time for specific content areas. We need to rethink that and spend more time combining our work to keep it applicable for today's learners. We live in a time where everyone can benefit from a bigger picture and be less granular. The National Council of Teachers of Mathematics outlines and lists 8 effective math teaching practices that you can see right here on this slide. They tie into almost all content areas. When we look at the list of 8 practices, we can see how immediately they tie into math and without much effort connect to education as a whole. These 8 effective teaching practices should be kept in mind as we develop lessons and think through what a solid math program will look like. Take a moment, look at these practices. What sticks out to you? What stands out to you? If we're going to implement tasks that promote reasoning and problem solving, we cannot do this in a one-sentence question. A context must be created. Stories allow for a situation to be developed. I read dozens of books a year, preferably fiction. I don't read these novels in one sitting, but in between readings, pause and reflect on what the story is about. We can do the same thing with children's literature. We don't have to read it through, but can pause and talk. We know that predicting next steps in the story is important for emergent readers. Teachers can do the same thing in the classroom, and the book can pertain to mathematics. My own teachers did this with the Boxcar Children, The Great Brain, The Chronicles of Narnia. Children need to be given a chance to think and ponder what the next steps are. This also leads into the 3rd bullet of connecting representations. We have literature for young children full of pictures and representations that they can make sense out of. The numbers are in the words, and the pictures show what it looks like. This representation is an important step between concrete and abstract. These conversations are what is so difficult now when we are working remotely with our students. Trying to facilitate meaningful mathematical discourse is hard when there is a lag time and you are not face-to-face. We can pose purposeful questions, but having a small group discussion is more limited. As I talk with teachers about how to do this, we always keep in mind the need for rigorous questions that go beyond the surface level, open-ended as opposed to single-word responses. This is a key topic when working with parents right now, encouraging them to ask deeper questions, to pause and talk throughout the story. This is what we should be encouraging our families to be thinking about. As we continue through these 8 practices, we want to keep in mind, again, the importance of the context and situation. We build conceptual understanding by giving it a place to reside. We promote the productive struggle when we ask questions that have depth to them and use stories that have an unknown ending. It is through this that we can best understand how our children are thinking, processing, and learning. This formative assessment is what should guide our instruction every day. We are constantly trying to think of a way for our math to be in a context, and the stories in these books are a gift for situational mathematics. The context is provided, and we have a huge library of resources to pull from, whether they be hard copy or on YouTube. I encourage you to take time in the coming weeks to read through more children's books. Look for the math that is both explicit and implicit in them. Stuart Murphy, as I said, has dozens of books where the math is right there in front of us. It's simple to take these books and tie them into the content children need at an early age. Rich tasks with reasoning opportunities is another one on this list. These are throughout the stories. We can read these and create activities and conversations with built-in access for our students and follow them as we approach problems from a different point of view. We don't all solve problems the same way, and we shouldn't. There's creativity involved in the understanding and development of the situation. When we read stories like these, we start to recognize that there is math all around us. Everything we do is comparing, full of patterns, looking for what the next step is, predicting, and dealing with hard numbers. We want our students to see the depth of mathematics. It is more than just memorizing and spitting back facts. It is about how the numbers work together and how they are all around us. Next time that you are alongside a young child, look at these 6 basic routines that can be a portion of your math time. Talk with your families about where the math is at home. When you go for a walk, what shapes are you looking for? Are you counting how many steps before you get to the next vehicle or a tree or house? What are the steps involved in getting dressed every day? And what is the routine in place with socks and shoes or left and right? Each of these items listed has a routine to them. What is the pattern that we can talk about with our children? What do they come to us expecting without us even realizing it? So read to your child, read to them often and talk about the math involved. Pull the math out and consider for yourself where the numbers are, where the patterns are, what situation is happening that can be predicted. This is the math in our literature. My youngest son still enjoys being read to. The latest book, otherwise known as Sheila the Great by Judy Blume, was just completed a few weeks ago. Half of it read by him silently and the other half aloud by my wife or myself. We stopped and talked about it as it was read through of the many days that it took to get through it. This is a part of a regular educational routine that's in place right now that involves literature and math together. Children's literature and math can go hand in hand. So remember the next time you're frustrated by the numbers that the words can help bring some comfort and context and help us remember the importance of mathematics in everyday life.
Hello, everybody. How nice it is to be here with all of you today. Hasn't this been a fantastic symposium? I've just loved some of the presentations that I've seen during the course of the day. Carolyn, I'd like to thank you for that very generous and great introduction. And John, the lead-in that you gave to my topic, the power of stories and visual models and the teaching of mathematics, was just perfect. So thank you for that as well. You know, we're going to take questions throughout my presentation, and so you can just type them in, and they'll go to Jon Dueck has offered to be the monitor of the questions, so he's going to kind of get them organized for me, and we're going to leave plenty of time at the end for those questions to be answered. And if I don't get to them all, if there are enough questions and I don't get to them all, we'll do some follow-up on the California Early Math Project website, the follow-up website for the conference, and also at the end there'll be information on how any of you can contact me if you'd like to. So let's get going on this very important topic. There have been some great overlaps during the course of the day about engagement in literature and mathematics, and you're going to hear some more of that here. Carolyn's already talked to you about my Math Start books, and I know that they've been well seen here at the conference so far. I want to mention my I See, I Learn series. My I See, I Learn series is about social emotional skills for young children in pre-K and K. How do I make a friend? How do I be a friend? How do I deal with frustration, cooperating with others? And so you may want to take a look at that too when you have an opportunity. And I do want to mention that I'm also on the authorship team of Envision Mathematics, a program that's used throughout California and throughout the United States. And some of you may have seen my work there as a visual learning strategist if your school district or if your children have used that program. My talk today is going to cover visual learning, what it is, storytelling and the power of storytelling as a powerful teaching tool, developing positive attitudes toward mathematics in our children, and then being creative about math. And these are really important subjects, and I'm going to try and hit on all four of them during the course of this short presentation today. So I want to first describe what visual learning is. It's really important that we use the same definition because there are lots of definitions out there and people talk about it in different ways. So when I talk about it as acquiring, in other words, taking in information, and communicating, giving out information. So the give and the take. You take some in, you acquire it, you get that information visually, or you communicate it outwards and you use visuals to communicate with others. And you do that through illustrations, photos, diagrams and graphs, symbols, icons, and just all other visual representations that you can think of. Just life around us, what we see. It's about making sense of complex data using visual models. That's what I mean when I talk about visual learning. And research has shown that visual learning is especially useful and helpful in the teaching of mathematics. In the book, Thinking Like Mathematicians, which was actually published back in the 1980s, but it's been republished many times in more recent years because it's such a great learning tool. If you don't have it in your library, I think it's a good thing to look for, Thinking Like Mathematicians. And there are a number of quotes in Thinking Like Mathematicians that talk about how can we get our kids to actually think like mathematicians. And we're going to talk a little bit about more about that today. This is one of my favorite talks about visual learning. What Einstein was able to do was to think visually. Now, a few of you have already today, if you've been into the breakout session on literature, you've seen a little bit about my book, Jack the Builder. I'm using it again here to kind of link those ideas together. And you may have seen also my video about how to read a math book and how to read it well. So I won't go into all of that here so that we're not too repetitious and don't take up too much time. But what I want to do is I want to get into the story a little bit so that you can see the power of storytelling and visual models together. And when you're starting the book, Jack has two blocks. He loves to build with blocks. And he's got two blocks, and he looks at those two blocks, and he says, you know what that could be? That could be a robot toy to play with. And so there's his robot toy, and you can see the outline of the two blocks and where his imagination is leading him. And then he wants to add one more, and he puts one more on top. And so 2, 3. He now has 3 blocks, and 3 blocks can be a hot dog stand to get a treat. And there's Jack right there in front with a hot dog in his hand. And now he's going to add 2 more, 3, 4, 5. Now I'm going to stop right here on the modeling concept because I think you all can see that what I'm doing is I'm using that powerful idea, concept of adding on or counting on. Jack doesn't have to go back and count the 3. He already knows he's got 3. So he just has to count from the 3, 4, 5. And that skill of counting 3 and then 4, 5 is the transition from counting everything to leading to equation building. It won't be long before Jack is saying 3 plus 2 equals 5. He puts his 5 together and they look out like a ferry boat out on the sea. And there's Jack waving from the back of the boat. He has 5, 6, 7, 8. He had 3 more on top, and the 8 blocks look like a lookout tower to watch for planes. We know that Jack has 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 blocks can be the tallest building in the world. Now, Jack has 12, and he's got to add 5 more. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 17 blocks become a rocket ship ready to take off now. Blast off. But all of a sudden, there's no more rocket ship, no more building, no more tower, no boat, no hot dog stand, not even a robot friend. Nothing but a pile of blocks. So Jack can start again. And that's the end of my story called Jack the Builder. But the important part of that story is the carrying of the story through the illustrations, so visual learning, and the carrying of the math through the models, visual learning. In one of the important keynotes today, Douglas Clement said, what counts in teaching and early math, learning trajectories for children. I can say it. And Doug talked about subatizing, counting goals, and about learning trajectories. And so I think I want to point that out because this is a counting trajectory, counting on. This is an important counting skill. And I think it's important for you as you review this conference, this symposium, to go back and take a good look at Doug Clement's important keynote. It was very well done and very exciting, and I think you'll find it useful to view it again. Back to thinking like mathematicians, understanding abstract math concepts like counting on, like we just talked about, is reliant on the ability to see how they work. You got to see the math. And students naturally use visual models to solve mathematical problems. They can see what's going on. They're able to visualize a problem as a set of images. Research shows that children are natural visual learners. They find meaning in images. They look around, they see what they see, and they find meaning in what they see. They're able to consider size. How big is that? This one's smaller. Recognize shapes. I think that's a cylinder. And identify simple patterns. Blue, blue, yellow, blue, blue, yellow. What comes next? They're able to grasp abstract concepts such as estimating quantities. Gee, I think that could be 20. Distances, that's further than that. And interpreting quantitative data represented in bar graphs. All of this through their visual learning capabilities. And we have to take advantage of that in our teaching. We have to take advantage of that in our daily classroom practice. Bar diagrams, visual representations, make problem solving accessible to all students, particularly English language learners. The visual language is the same language for everyone. It gives everyone the same access to the information you are presenting. By the way, many of you know Randy Charles. He's a very well-known California math educator. And that was one of his statements made in his last NCTM presentation. Talk a little bit about STEM today, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. They're really important. And, a lot of people think they start at high school or something. They don't. They start at preschool. We have to start thinking about the application of STEM theory right from the very start, teaching early science ideas, technology ideas, engineering concepts, and especially mathematics skills. And it's important as we think about STEM to think about the fact that our kids need the arts too, creativity and mathematics. And so going from STEM to STEAM. I'm an advocate for STEAM. I hope you are too in your classroom work. Because we want our kids to talk about math, have conversations about mathematics, sketch about math, make their own pictures about what their mathematical thinking is all about, write stories about math like I do. We want our students to be able to express their ideas, their thinking, demonstrate their understandings, what they know about math, and explore their creativity about mathematics. Those are our goals. That's what we want our kids to be able to do. So in another important keynote this morning, Rachel Lambert and Sarah Lev talked about mathematics for students with disabilities in early childhood. And in Sarah's portion of the presentation, she talked particularly about project-based learning, sometimes called PBL. And I liked her emphasis on authenticity, on starting with a driving question. What is the question that is driving this activity, this particular project? And on the power of collaboration, of kids working together and taking advantage of each other's knowledge and learning from one another, which can be done remotely. It can be done in Zoom meetings. It can be done in classrooms. It can be done in homes. And so I'd like you to also go back to that presentation, that keynote, when you have a chance, and listen to it again in light of what I'm talking about in this particular presentation. So here are a couple activities. Some of them are projects. Some of them are activities that I think will get you excited about things you can do. In math, we learn about mass and volume. And so one project that one teacher did was thinking about 100 objects and how if somebody brings in 100 pennies, they take up a certain amount of space, a certain amount of volume. And if somebody brought in 100 quarters, they'd take up more space. And if someone brought in 100 tennis balls, they'd even take up more mass and more volume. And so depending on what your 100 is of and what your size each individual within the 100 is of, you have differences in volume and mass. And so here's a kid who made a big poster, which I love, about his 100 friends. And while I didn't make that big enough, he's got kids like himself. He's got obviously his parents and grandparents. He even has a couple dogs and cats there. But I love the fact that he was able to find 100 friends to make that sign out of. And, everybody brought in items and they couldn't fit into the same size bag, and they compared that volume. And then they had discussions about it, which is very important to talk about the concept that is being treated here. I love maps. I love kids making maps because, they teach about dimension and scale, size differences. And I have a book called Treasure Map. And after reading Treasure Map, a number of teachers have done map making projects. And you can make maps of the classroom and get a feeling for where things are placed in relation to one another, or maps of a bedroom, maps of a bed, maps of your desktop, maps of the kitchen table. You can make maps of just about anything. And they're a wonderful activity, a wonderful math activity for kids to do at home or in school. This girl is working on concentric circles. Look at how carefully she's painting those circles in. And she's got this project going on where she's going to understand what concentric circles are all about. Here's another one working on concentric circles. Look at her. She's got some great watercolor there that she's painting with. And I love her hair, hair decorations. Look at that. They almost match the circles that she's making. And then all the kids put their concentric circles together and made this incredible classroom display. I understand it stayed up in the school for about a month because everybody loved it so much. I have a book called Circus Shapes, and it kind of prompts kids to make towns out of their shapes they know about and then write stories about them, writing about math, being creative about math, making artwork about math. Look at these shapes. I mean, there's rectangles and squares, there's triangles, and there's even a circle up there in the sky. Here's another one. Look at that, and look at that great paper, that great written paper, talking and writing and recording ideas about mathematics. And then moving on to 3D objects. Another book of mine is called Captain Invisible, that deals with the relationship between the two-dimensional objects and their three-dimensional counterparts. For example, a circle is the base of a cylinder. It's the base of a sphere. A square is the base of a cube, etc. And so these kids are making 3D towns out of three-dimensional shapes and learning all about their attributes and properties. Look at that. And then there's a project that I want to share with you now that's very exciting. It was done by a group in Pennsylvania.
do this. I'll tell you what it is. Have you said what? That's right. Right? Backwards. What? Not backwards. And right. Okay, go to the left.
Wasn't that exciting? Gosh, I just love that project. And to get those kindergarten kids, learning how to program and how to code using that BeeBot, just absolutely exciting and truly a wonderful, wonderful math product. And this one is too. I love this one. I'm afraid that photo is just a little bit out of focus, but I like it anyway because it's got a group of kindergartners working with a group of fourth graders. And the fourth graders taught the kindergarten class how to make houses for mouses. Houses for mouses. What a great project. Dimension, scale, just all kinds of mathematics there. Shapes, just absolutely fantastic. Yet another thing you can easily do in your classroom to advance your kids' skills and engage them in mathematical learning. Because for our children to be successful in math, we have to infuse a can-do and can't-wait-to-do attitude. Carolyn brought up in her introduction at the very start of the day, Carolyn Pfister brought up the fact that, little kids really like math, and they think they do well at it. And then, over time, people lose that, and things like math anxiety get, popularized, and people get concerned about math, and people get afraid that they can't do it. Well, I think if we do the right thing in the early years, if we do the right thing and make kids excited about math and get them engaged in mathematics through doing projects and activities with them and show them how mathematics relates to the real world, we can give them that can-do attitude, that can't-wait-to-do attitude that we want them to have about mathematics. And if we start them right, they're going to have it with them for the rest of their lives. That's the big deal. That's our responsibility, but it's also our opportunity. And so our young children need to be fully engaged in acquiring their math skills. In other words, into it, really into it. And they need to be persistent. It's not something you can just jump into and jump away from. Come on, let's get this done. Let's get this done. It's going to be fantastic. And motivated to move their mathematical knowledge forward, to learn more, to advance to the next step. And we can make that happen. Now, here's a big project. I'm going to go through it a little quickly because I don't want to take too much time, but it just shows you a project that almost got out of hand. It's kindergartners. And the teacher found out, the teacher is from New Jersey. Her name is Kim Muller. And what she found out is that if they collected bottle caps, that they could recycle them through a company in the town that they were in. And so it's kind of an ecological project, a STEM project, because it had to do with the combination of the ecology, science, and mathematics and counting. And what their job was to take trays and make trays of 10. And they had to have certain attributes, either it was a color range or it was a size range or something like that, so that they just weren't arbitrary. You can see this kid just picked 10 exactly the same caps. And then they would go to the counter, and the counter would take care of it and count them up and look at that using tally marks. And so there were bunches of 5s, and then circling the bunches of 5s to make bunches of 10s so that we could count easily by 10s. And then look at all the counting that's going on. Again, these are kindergartners, and look at those big numbers those kids are getting exposed to through this incredible project. Now, one kid, his name is Colin, he even made a map of the assembly line, which is really cute, I think, because getting back to those mapping skills I talked about earlier. And the kids wrote stories about them and wrote stories about their findings. And so they combined counting, and they combined attributes and thinking about what they were doing, and bunching things in 10s and getting to big numbers all in one project. Absolutely fantastic. And so those strategies, there are visual instruction strategies that really kind of support this idea that visual learning should be a part of your daily classroom practice. And for many of you, I know it already is. And so one of those things is to display materials that help to explain math ideas and new concepts. I mean, if you're going to be talking about three-dimensional shapes, have some around. If you're going to be talking about quantities, have some places where you're showing more than things and fewer than, pictures of something that has a lot of something in it and very few of something in it. And just have them hanging around on your refrigerator door or in the classroom, and kids will look at them and they'll come to their own conclusions. Try to get kids to search for real-life examples and report on their findings. I think the report part is really important. Look what I found. Look what I found, a square. Where'd you find it? Well, I found a square when I was looking at whatever they were looking at. Work with students to create concept maps of mathematical ideas. And this is something that takes an adult working with the students to do it, but it connects ideas across mathematics. This is addition. And what does addition relate to? Well, it relates kind of, I'll say backwards or differently, to subtraction. So put those together in a concept map. And then what else might it relate to? It might relate to counting by tens, 10, 20, 30, 40, or it might relate to counting by fives. And so all of a sudden you get a pattern going of the things that relate to one another, helping kids to connect their mathematical thinking and their mathematical ideas, which is so important because it's a big world, the world of mathematics. We want students to sketch as part of their math note-taking process. I love to see math sketchbooks that kids have where they've sketched out their mathematical ideas, and so you can see them. And group students when you can, either live or in a classroom or in a home situation or on Zoom calls. Group students to work together to create models, actual models of new concepts, so they can all take advantage of each other's learning. I love it when I see a math literature library in a classroom and being used. We have created a math literature library on my website, which will be posted at the end of this talk. And the idea is that I've done a lot of readings of my books because it's not so easy for many kids in the country to get to a library or to get to a classroom right now. And so we've created a math literature library of me reading books right on my website for you. And finally, just the idea, I mean, this is what I've been doing throughout this talk, of seeing what kids do and also myself and my books doing, of creating visual models to help bring math to life, because that's what we want to be able to do in our very important work with young children. These are my books that were just published in Spanish. I think they maybe have been seen by you somewhere already. They were published for this conference in work with the California Early Math Project by my publisher, HarperCollins. And I think you know this already, but I'm going to repeat it if you don't mind. They're available in packs of 10 at a great conference price from Books by the Bushel. The packs of 10 are these 5 books and their English counterparts, so that you can have both in your classroom. And look at, there's that Jack the Builder that we've talked about already down there in the lower right-hand side. So look for those. They're brand new Spanish translations created just in time for this conference, for this symposium. And now what I'd like to do is I'd like to see if there are any questions. I'm hoping there are some questions, and Jon Dueck has been collecting those for me. So let's see what happens.
Thank you, Stuart. I certainly appreciate the time you just gave right now with some great ideas. So I have a number of questions that I've been keeping track of. The first one is asking about your books, what it might be available for the earliest infants, toddlers, birth to perhaps 18 months. Is there anything in that realm?
Yeah, there are a few of my books that get used very young. One is called A Pair of Socks. It's illustrated by Lois Ehlert. Many of you know her work. She's a very famous children's book author and illustrator. And it's a very simple book about matching patterns. And so I've used that books with, certainly with children 2 years old, and they enjoy it, they get it, they can find the patterns, they can find what matches, and it's a very easy book for them. I also have a very, very early counting book called Everybody Counts. And buddy is B-U-D-D-Y, all your buddies, and everybody counts. And it's gives, for every number, it gives 3 different representations of that number, the numerical symbol for that number, a visualization of that number. If there are 3 cats, there are pictured 3 cats, so you can count them. And then in the environment of the illustration, there will be three cats. So you can see them in three different ways. So those are a couple. Please go to my website and look at my level 1 books. They're my very youngest books, and you'll find some that fit that very early math market.
Thank you, Stuart. Following up on that, when people go to your website, is there a list of books for English learners, other languages? You touched on that a bit. Could you expand on what's available in other languages?
Yeah, what we've done is we've put a lot of Spanish-related materials on there because the new Spanish books are out now. And so those being out means that there is a book that was actually read during the lunch break at the conference called Super Sandcastle Saturday, and that's read in both English and in Spanish, and that's available on my website. Also, we've created a number of activities for the 5 books that are in Spanish. They're actually Spanish activities that are available too. And now that the books are out, we're going to be expanding that further as there's more and more demand.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Stuart, you talked about some great examples for youth used with children. A lot of them were classroom examples. Do you have any advice for the attendees, the listeners, about using your books in a virtual setting? Teachers who aren't able to see their students physically, but are doing this through Zoom or other video agencies.
We've been doing that, so I do, and it's really, really important right now because we've got to keep that engagement going, and if we lose it, we're going to be sad about that afterwards. And so I think you have to have some activities that you can do in front of the kids on Zoom or other related calls. And just think of the one I showed you on concentric circles. You could be drawing those, and those could be done with very, very simple tools that most households would have: a piece of paper and a pen, a piece of paper and a couple colors, and just draw concentric circles, and then find a way to collect them some way. Have the parents take pictures of them and send them back to you so you can create a concentric circle wall. I think also you as a teacher could do a map of something. You could do something really simple. I'd start with something really, really simple like a desktop or a part of a room or part of a classroom, just a very, very simple map, and kind of put those out, and then ask the kids to have a pen and a pencil or something and a paper together to make maps. And to make maps and to kind of talk about, and this is important too, I think, to have some ways of the kids to communicate back to you. And and they get used to it. They get used to finding ways to push the button that they can stop muting, and they can talk back to you, so they can say what I made, talk about what they made. As they get more sophisticated with it, they probably are going to be able to share their own screens and show you what they've made. But anyway, I think a lot of these can be done very easily with the involvement of kids and the cooperation of their parents.
So, Stuart, I know that you're over on the East Coast, and maybe not everyone realizes that, but do you ever do tours through California and visit schools and talk with children and teachers?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I live in Boston, and so I'm on the other coast. And yes, I do. I've done a lot of work in the state of California for many years now, and I've been a speaker at California Math Council, and I've been to a number of individual school districts in California, and in truth, I do a lot less of that now. I used to do a lot more of that, and but if there's certainly if there's something that comes up that supports the California Early Math Project, I've been so honored to be associated with them and with their work, with you and your work, John. And so important. And it's such an important involvement that if certainly if something came up that related to that, I'd be happy to try and make that happen.
Wonderful. We have teachers already chiming in, asking how they can get you into their classroom. So I can expect it.
I'd love to be with kids, and I love to be with teachers. I often couple my visits with a family math night or a professional development kind of session for teachers. I usually try not to do both the school visits, the professional development, and the family math all in one day, because that would be a very full day. But I usually do one of the others of those add-on activities. And boy, they're fun, lots of fun.
Very nice. Stuart, another question for you is, do you ever teach courses on writing and mathematics?
No, I haven't. I mean, what I've done is I have presented with other teachers, university professors who are teaching courses about writing, and they want someone to come in and talk about nonfiction writing for kids. And I've already mentioned professional development workshops for teachers, trying to further the notion of visual learning and visual learning models in classroom experiences and doing some hands-on activities. So I've done that, which is teaching and teaching environments, but I've never been the teacher or the professor of those, but rather an invited guest. And so that's been my experience, and I love doing that too.
Love it. There's lots of comments about the BeeBots, Stuart. People want to do that activity, want to try it out in their classroom.
Isn't that fantastic? I mean, gosh, I think I should have taken out shares in the BeeBot company, whoever makes that thing.
So, Stuart, this is more just about you question that's come up. What type of books do you like to read?
Oh, I like to read historic fiction. I like historic fiction, books that are about history, but they're written in a way that as if it's really taking place in front of you, so that they're taking the liberty of saying, that, and then Abraham Lincoln said, well, we don't know what he said, he's talking to his wife or something. And yet they give you the sense of life at that time. And so the people who write historic fiction, who, are the top presenters of that, I love it because it's real and it's history, and it's real life and drama, and so that's kind of my favorite genre for my own personal reading.
All right, Stuart. Next question is: where do you find the inspiration for the books that you have written or plan to write?
I used to say years ago, I found it for my kids. And then I said I found it for my grandkids, because we spent a lot of time together. But now my grandkids are getting older too. But I spent so much time in schools. And when there's breaks in schools, I've done such things as having somebody empty their backpack and show me what's in it, because it shows you what they're interested in. Can be a scary experience too. I've checked out what kids are looking at and picking out themselves without their parents being there in bookstores, to get an idea of what they like and what's on their minds. And back in the days when we could get together more, I would sometimes, if I was working on a project, I'd arrange with a nearby school, where I could sit down at lunch with a couple of kids and just talk about a couple of ideas and get what they're thinking. Because what I've done to get the topics for my books is I keep lists of what teachers are concerned about, what kids are being tested for, what teachers are concerned about. And so I keep that running list of math topics. And then I try and relate that to real life situations that kids would be in or might be in, because I want my books to show that mathematical topic really applied, an application of that topic to a situation that kids can think about as, oh, that's how you'd use that. That's where you'd use fractions, and that's a fraction of a pizza, for goodness sakes. That kind of thing, so that so that it relates the real thing to the abstract mathematics, and so taking it from said mathematically from the concrete to the abstract with the steps in between.
Very nice. Stuart, we've had a couple of people who are wondering through the poll about what do you recommend with your books and beyond for students that have a short attention span, or have some just struggling with paying attention throughout a lesson or through an entire book?
Yeah, I've run into that too, and I think you just have to pep it up a bit. You got to stop every so often and ask what they think, so they're not just listeners. They're part of the presentation. It's interactive, and say, hey, what do you think happened here? How do you think that kid feels? And, that kind of stuff. So that, what do you think is going to happen next? Or, gee, count into 5, what number comes next? Or making it more mathematical or social with the story, but trying to get the kid to feel like he's part of the story being read. He or she is part of the story being read, and not that she's just hearing it from you and, oh yeah, here's the next page. So I think it's easy for children to have a short attention span, and I think it's easy for us to engage them more. Change your voice, change the pace, stand up, sit down. Just kind of the movement that's going on, and make it different, so that different as appropriate to the story, so that the children have a reason to be engaged with you in the reading of that story. I think that's an important point to make to parents as well. When you're talking with parents of your children, talk to them about using books effectively. You know, that there's the thing about reading books, and then there's the thing about reading books effectively, and using books effectively to try and not only engage children, but motivate them and really, truly capture their attention, because that's what we want.
Yeah, nice. Thank you, Stuart. Last question, and we'll wrap it up after this. A couple people are asking how they can get in touch with you.
Oh, well, let's see. It's going to come up on the last screen. So it's the easiest way is to email me at stuart@stuartjmurphy.com. But I'll put that up on the last screen and let it idle there for a minute so that you can all see it. I'd love to hear from you. You can also get in touch with me through the California Early Math Project, and I think it's great. I'd love to hear your questions, further questions, and hear from any of you. Well,
thank you for your time, Stuart. This has been great to hear from you, and also just get a few more questions answered from everybody.
Wonderful, great. Thank you, John, for moderating that. So what I'd like to do in wrapping up this session is to just kind of give you a very, very brief summary. And that summary is mathematics, the topic we've been talking about. The topic this conference is about what math is for young children, math and early math and what it means, and the fact that early math starts early. It's not something to wait for. It's something that starts in its appropriate way with early play and everything you do with your children to help them find mathematics in real life experiences. And then you add in positive attitudes. Hey, I like this. This is fun. I get better at it. You know, I'm doing well. I figured that out. And gee, I'd like to do it again. I'd like to do more of it. And instilling that attitude and getting kids to really feel excited about their mathematics. And then oops, we got a little freeze here, but then using visualizations to help kids and to help kids in their mathematics. So my PowerPoint just froze out with only just 2 slides left. So I'm going to do it verbally, and I'm hoping that you can all hear me as I'm doing this because okay, good, because I've got a pause in my system for some reason at all with only 2 slides left to go. Embarrassing, but anyway, I'm glad you can hear me, and I think that these things, that these positive attitudes, mathematics, storytelling, and the whole idea of visualizations and visual learning lead to more successful students. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to develop more successful students in our work. So I want to thank you all for being a part of my session today, for being with me, for listening to me. I want to congratulate you all for being a part of this symposium. And so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to slowly repeat my website, www.stuart, S-T-U-A-R-T, Murphy, Stuart J. Murphy, all run together, lowercase, www.stuartjmurphy.com. There you'll find all the resources you need about my work. You'll find the Spanish translations information. You'll find the activities I talked about earlier. And then my email address, if somebody wants to contact me directly, is pretty much the same thing. So it's you don't have to write it down too much. It's Stuart, me, S-T-U-A-R-T, at Stuart J. Murphy, StuartJMurphy.com. So that's me. That's where you can find me. I'm sorry it's not up on the screen for you all to see it. And once again, thank you very much. I really enjoyed being with you today. It's been great.